The clinking of silverware against porcelain usually signaled a rare moment of familial peace in our household, a brief truce in the unspoken war that simmered beneath the surface of every gathering. But tonight, the air in our meticulously decorated dining room was thick with a different kind of tension, sharper and more suffocating than the aroma of Mom's perfectly roasted chicken, a culinary masterpiece that usually managed to soothe even the most frayed nerves. Every Sunday dinner at the Hayes residence was a performance, a carefully choreographed ballet of polite conversation and subtle digs, and I, Olivia Hayes, always felt like the understudy, forever overshadowed by the dazzling lead. My sister, Isabella, sat directly across from me, her perfect blonde hair gleaming under the chandelier, catching the light in a halo of effortless perfection, her smile radiating an effortless charm that captivated everyone, especially our parents. She was the golden child, the prodigy, the one who effortlessly excelled at everything: academics, sports, social graces, a natural magnet for adoration and praise. And I was simply me, the quiet one, the artistic one, the one who always seemed to fall short no matter how hard I tried, destined to exist in her brilliant shadow. Tonight, the conversation had, predictably, revolved around Isabella's latest triumph, a promotion at her prestigious law firm, making her the youngest partner in its history, a feat that had sent ripples of pride through our entire extended family. Our parents beamed, their eyes alight with unconcealed pride, shining with a joy that seemed reserved exclusively for her achievements, showering her with effusive praise. "Our Isabella, always breaking barriers," Dad boomed, raising his glass of expensive Cabernet, his voice resonating with paternal pride. "A true trailblazer, a force of nature," Mom added, her voice thick with emotion, her eyes misty with adoration. I offered a tight, polite smile, forcing myself to swallow the bitter taste of envy that always accompanied these celebrations, a familiar, unwelcome companion. I was genuinely happy for Isabella, truly. My heart felt a flicker of warmth for her success, but a part of me, the small, insecure part that had been nurtured by years of comparison, always wondered why my own achievements, however modest, never seemed to elicit the same level of enthusiasm, the same unbridled joy, the same passionate declarations of pride. My recent gallery showing, a culmination of years of tireless work, countless sleepless nights, and the pouring of my very soul onto canvas, had been met with a polite, "That's nice, dear," very expressive, and a quick, almost imperceptible change of subject, as if my passion was an inconvenient interruption to the main event. Isabella, ever gracious in victory, accepted their accolades with a demure nod, a practiced humility that only served to enhance her allure, but her eyes, sharp and calculating, flickered to me. I knew that look. It was the prelude to a subtle jab, a gentle reminder of my place in the family hierarchy, a quiet assertion of her dominance. "You know, Olivia," she began, her voice sweet as honey, yet laced with an almost imperceptible edge, a hidden barb designed to wound. "I was just telling Mom and Dad how much pressure there is in my line of work. The long hours, the constant demands, the sheer intellectual rigor required to navigate complex legal cases. It's not for everyone, of course. Some people just aren't cut out for that kind of intensity, that kind of relentless pursuit of excellence." She paused, taking a delicate sip of wine, her gaze never leaving mine, a silent challenge in her eyes. Her words, seemingly innocuous, were a direct hit, a subtle but potent dismissal of my own chosen path, my life as a struggling freelance artist, a quiet pursuit of beauty that she clearly deemed insignificant. My cheeks flushed, a familiar heat spreading across my face, a telltale sign of my discomfort. I gripped my fork tighter, my knuckles white, trying to maintain my composure, to project an image of serene indifference I didn't feel, to pretend. Her words didn't pierce me. "Oh, Isabella, you're just too modest," Mom interjected, oblivious to the undercurrents, her adoration blinding her to the subtle cruelty. "You make it sound easy, but we know how hard you work. That's why you're so successful, darling." Dad nodded in agreement, his eyes shining with admiration, completely captivated by his golden daughter. Exactly. It takes a certain kind of dedication, a certain kind of grit, a relentless drive to reach the top. Not everyone has it, you. No. Some people just prefer a simpler, less demanding life. His words, though not directly aimed at me, felt like a direct accusation, a silent judgment on my perceived lack of ambition, my failure to chase the conventional markers of success, my apparent contentment with mediocrity. The air grew heavier, pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe, suffocating me with the weight of their unspoken expectations. I felt the familiar burden of their disappointment, a weight I had carried for as long as I could remember, a constant companion. Then Isabella leaned forward, her voice dropping slightly, as if sharing a profound truth, a sacred revelation, her gaze fixed on me with an almost pitying expression, a look of condescending superiority. "That's why your sister is better than you," she said, her words a soft, almost gentle pronouncement, yet they landed with the force of a physical blow, shattering the fragile piece of the dinner table, reverberating through the room. The clinking of silverware ceased. A sudden, profound silence descended upon the room, broken only by the frantic hammering of my own heart, its frantic rhythm echoing in my ears. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, like a shroud, wrapping around me, suffocating, me stealing my breath. Better. Not just more successful, or more ambitious, or more conventionally brilliant, but fundamentally better. The word echoed in the hollow chambers of my mind, reverberating with the weight of every childhood slight, every unspoken comparison, every moment I had felt inadequate, every time I had been found wanting. My vision blurred, tears pricking, at my eyes threatening to spill over, hot and angry, a torrent of suppressed emotion. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, to tell them about the sleepless nights, the endless hours, the passion I poured into my craft, the small victories I cherished, the quiet resilience that had kept me going through years of struggle, the unwavering belief in my own path. But the words were stuck in my throat, choked by the overwhelming shame, by the sheer weight of her condemnation, by the crushing realization that she truly believed it, that this was her genuine, unfiltered assessment of my worth. My parents, finally sensing the shift in atmosphere, looked between us, their expressions a mixture of confusion and mild discomfort, a belated recognition of the tension. "Isabella, darling, that's a bit harsh," Mom said, her voice soft. A weak attempt at mediation, a futile effort to smooth over the jagged edges of her daughter's cruelty. Dad cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable, shifting uneasily in his seat. But the damage was done. The words had been spoken, raw and unfiltered, laying bare the ugly truth of our family dynamic, the unspoken hierarchy that had always governed our lives. I looked at Isabella, her face a mask of serene superiority, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk playing on her lips, a silent declaration of victory. She had won. She had landed the final blow, confirming what I had always suspected, what had been whispered in the quiet corners of my mind for years. I was not enough. I would never be enough. But as the familiar wave of despair threatened to consume me, to drag me down into the abyss of self-pity, a different thought surfaced, sharp and clear amidst the rising tide of pain. A secret. A truth so profound, so devastating that it would shatter Isabella's carefully constructed world, dismantle her perceived superiority, and expose the fragile foundation upon which her entire identity rested. A secret she didn't know. A secret that would reveal that her shining success, her effortless brilliance, her very existence as the golden child, was built on a lie. And in that moment, as her cruel words echoed in my ears, a cold, unwavering resolve settled within me. I knew that the time for silence was over. The time for truth had come. The words, "That's why your sister is better than you," had been a culmination of a lifetime of subtle slights and overt favoritism, a symphony of unspoken comparisons that had played out since my earliest memories. From the moment Isabella was born 2 years after me, she had been the sun around which our family orbited, the undeniable center of their universe. She was precocious, charming, effortlessly brilliant, a natural performer who captivated every room she entered, a beacon of perfection. I, on the other hand, was quiet, introverted, more comfortable with a sketchbook than a spotlight, a silent observer in the grand drama of our family life. Our parents, while never explicitly stating their preference, always celebrated Isabella's achievements with a fervor that dwarfed any recognition I received. Her straight A's were met with champagne toasts and celebratory dinners, my respectable B's with a gentle, "You could try harder, dear. You have so much potential." Her athletic victories earned her prime spots on the mantelpiece, adorned with gleaming trophies and ribbons. My artistic endeavors were relegated to the fridge door, then eventually a dusty corner of the attic, a forgotten testament to my quiet passions. I learned early on that to gain their approval, to earn even a fraction of their effusive praise, I had to be more like Isabella, a futile and soul-crushing endeavor that left me feeling perpetually inadequate. I tried. I really did. I joined the debate club, despite my crippling stage fright, my voice trembling every time I had to speak in public. I attempted soccer, despite my complete lack of coordination, tripping over my own feet more often than the ball. I even tried to force myself into a more outgoing personality, mimicking Isabella's effortless charisma, her ability to charm anyone she met. But it was never enough. I was always the pale imitation, the less than, the one who just couldn't quite measure up, forever chasing a standard I could never reach. The constant comparison chipped away at my self-esteem, leaving me feeling perpetually inadequate, a shadow living in her brilliant light, a constant reminder of my perceived shortcomings. It wasn't just my parents. Isabella herself, whether intentionally or not, reinforced this narrative. She was always helping me, guiding me, offering unsolicited advice that felt more like condescension, a subtle assertion of her superiority. "You're so sweet, Olivia, but you really need to learn to speak up for yourself, to be more assertive," she'd say, after effortlessly charming a teacher into giving her an extension on a major assignment. "Your art is lovely, truly, but have you thought about something more practical, like graphic design for a corporation? You could make real money, build a real career." Her words, always delivered with a smile, were like tiny needles, pricking at my deepest insecurities, reminding me of my unconventional path. But there was a secret, a truth so profound, so deeply buried, that it would shatter the very foundation of Isabella's perceived superiority, dismantle the narrative of her effortless brilliance, and expose the fragile, almost fraudulent nature of her golden child status. A secret that had been kept from her, from our parents, from everyone, for over 2 decades. A secret I had only stumbled upon by accident a few months ago while helping Mom clean out Grandma Rose's attic after she passed away, a task filled with bittersweet memories. Among the dusty boxes of old photographs and forgotten heirlooms, tucked away beneath a pile of antique linens that smelled faintly of mothballs and lavender, I found a small, leather-bound diary, its pages yellowed with age. It was Grandma Rose's diary, meticulously kept, filled with her elegant cursive, her thoughts and feelings poured onto the page. And on one particular page, dated a few weeks before Isabella's birth, was an entry that stopped my heart, a revelation that stole my breath. It detailed a desperate conversation between Grandma Rose and our mother. Mom, then a young woman, had been struggling with a profound, debilitating depression during her second pregnancy, a darkness that had consumed her. The entry spoke of Mom's overwhelming anxiety, her fear of not being able to cope with 2 children, her deep-seated belief that she was failing as a mother, that she was simply not enough. She had confessed to Grandma Rose that she was considering giving the baby up for adoption. Not because she didn't love the child, not because she didn't want her, but because she felt utterly incapable of providing the love and care a second child deserved, especially given her fragile mental state. She felt she was a burden, a failure, and that the baby deserved a better, more stable home, a life free from her own struggles. Grandma Rose, a woman of immense strength and practicality, a formidable matriarch, had been horrified. She loved her daughter deeply, but she also understood the societal pressures and the family's rigid expectations, the importance of maintaining appearances. An adoption, especially under such circumstances, would have been a scandal, a permanent stain on the Hayes family name, a public admission of weakness that would have shattered their carefully constructed image. So she devised a plan. A desperate, morally ambiguous plan to protect her daughter and the family's reputation from public scrutiny. She would adopt the baby herself, raising her as her own, but only until Mom recovered, until she was strong enough to reclaim her child. The plan was to eventually return the child to Mom and Dad, presenting it as a seamless transition, a temporary arrangement due to Grandma's desire for a grandchild to spoil, a convenient fiction. It was a convoluted, heartbreaking scheme, born of desperation and a misguided sense of protection, a secret that would ripple through generations. But Mom never fully recovered. Her depression lingered, a persistent shadow that clung to her, never quite lifting. And Isabella, the adopted grandchild, thrived under Grandma Rose's doting care, blossoming under her singular attention. Grandma, seeing Isabella's natural brilliance, her effortless charm, realized she had a unique opportunity. She began to subtly, meticulously, mold Isabella into the perfect child, the golden girl, showering her with attention, enrolling her in every prestigious program, pushing her to excel, to be beyond reproach. She wanted Isabella to be undeniably successful, so successful that no one would ever question her origins, no one would ever suspect the truth, no one would ever dare to whisper about scandal. She wanted Isabella to be so brilliant that her existence would justify the elaborate deception, that her success would erase any hint of scandal, any blemish on the family name. The diary entries detailed Grandma Rose's growing attachment to Isabella, her immense pride in Isabella's achievements, but also her profound guilt. Guilt over the deception, guilt over the emotional distance it created between Mom and Isabella, and guilt over the subtle, almost imperceptible way it marginalized me, the biological daughter who was always just a little less perfect, a little less shiny, a little less the focus of their attention. Grandma Rose had loved me, I knew that, but her focus, her energy, her very being, had been consumed by the monumental task of raising Isabella to be flawless, to be beyond reproach, to be the perfect shield against a hidden truth. The diary ended abruptly, a few months before Grandma Rose's passing, with a final heartbreaking entry. I pray to God this secret dies with me. It has been my greatest burden and my greatest love. Forgive me, Olivia. Forgive me, my dear daughter. Forgive me, Isabella. Forgive us all. The weight of this secret had been crushing. It explained so much. Isabella's almost obsessive need for perfection, her relentless drive, her subtle cruelty towards me, as if she sensed, on some subconscious level, that she had something to prove, that her position was not entirely secure. It explained our parents' almost worshipful adoration of her, a desperate attempt to compensate for the emotional distance, for the years they hadn't truly raised her, for a guilt they didn't even know they carried. And it explained my own persistent feeling of inadequacy, of being an outsider in my own family, a constant reminder of a painful truth. I wasn't just less than. I was a constant reminder of a painful truth, a living shadow of a secret they all, unknowingly, protected. Isabella wasn't better than me because of some inherent superiority. She was the product of a desperate, decades-long deception, a meticulously crafted facade designed to protect a family from scandal. Her brilliance wasn't effortless. It was the result of a grandmother's singular, almost obsessive focus, a desperate attempt to justify a lie. And she didn't know that. She didn't know that her entire identity, her very foundation, was built on a secret that could shatter everything. The words, "That's why your sister is better than you," had been a poisoned arrow, striking deep, leaving a festering wound. But the secret I carried was a nuclear bomb, capable of obliterating the entire landscape of our family, leaving nothing but scorched earth. As Isabella continued to bask in the glow of our parents' adoration, oblivious to the precariousness of her position, a cold, hard resolve settled within me, hardening my heart. The dinner ended, the polite goodbyes exchanged, the forced smiles fading as we dispersed, and I retreated to my apartment, the diary clutched in my trembling hands, its pages whispering the truth. The weight of the truth was almost unbearable, a suffocating burden that pressed down on me, making it hard to breathe, stealing my sleep. What was I going to do? Reveal it? Expose the decades-long deception that had shaped all our lives, that had twisted our relationships into unrecognizable knots? Or keep it buried, allowing the lie to continue, allowing Isabella to live in blissful ignorance? while I carried the crushing weight of the truth alone, a silent martyr. The thought of revealing it was terrifying. It was terrifying. It would shatter our parents' carefully constructed world, expose their vulnerability, and force them to confront a painful past they had unknowingly perpetuated, a past that would redefine their understanding of their own lives. It would devastate Isabella, stripping away her identity, forcing her to question everything she believed about herself, about her family, about her place in the world, leaving her adrift in a sea of uncertainty. The scandal would be immense, far-reaching, a permanent stain on the Hayes name, the very thing Grandma Rose had desperately tried to prevent, a public humiliation that would echo for generations. I imagined the fallout, the accusations, the recriminations, the irreparable damage to our already fragile family bonds, the shattered trust that might never be rebuilt. Would they ever forgive me for unleashing such chaos, for tearing down their carefully constructed reality? Would Isabella ever forgive me for tearing down the very foundation of her existence, for revealing the truth of her origins? But the thought of not revealing it was equally unbearable. To continue living under the shadow of her perceived superiority, to endure her subtle digs and condescending advice, knowing the truth, felt like a slow, agonizing death of my own spirit, a constant erosion of my self-worth. To allow her to believe she was inherently better than me, when her entire life was a testament to a desperate, misguided act of protection, felt like a profound injustice, a betrayal of my own truth. It wasn't just about my pain anymore. It was about the truth, about the right to know one's own history, however painful, however inconvenient. It was about the insidious nature of secrets, how they twist and distort relationships, creating a web of unspoken resentments and unacknowledged wounds, slowly poisoning everything they touch. I spent days in a haze, unable to eat, unable to sleep. The diary open on my coffee table, its pages screaming the truth, its words burning into my mind. I reread every entry, searching for a sign, a different interpretation, a reason to keep silent, a way to justify burying the truth. But the more I read, the clearer it became. Grandma Rose, in her desperate attempt to protect, had inadvertently created a dynamic that had wounded us all. She had loved Isabella fiercely, but that love had come at a cost I had paid, and a cost Isabella had unknowingly incurred, a silent burden she carried. Finally, after a week of agonizing deliberation, of wrestling with my conscience, I made a decision. I wouldn't reveal the secret publicly, not yet. Not without a plan, not without understanding the full implications, not without preparing for the inevitable fallout. But I couldn't keep it entirely to myself either. There was one person who deserved to know, one person who had suffered silently, alongside me, albeit unknowingly, our mother. She had been the one who had endured the initial pain, the one whose mental health had been so fragile, the one who had been manipulated by her own mother's desperate scheme. She deserved the truth, and perhaps together we could figure out how to navigate this treacherous terrain, how to pick up the pieces. I called Mom, my voice trembling as I asked her to meet me for coffee, just the two of us, a rare, intimate request. She sounded surprised but agreed. Her curiosity piqued. We met at a quiet cafe, far from the prying eyes of family, a neutral ground for a difficult conversation. I started slowly, cautiously, talking about Grandma Rose, about her diary, about the profound love she had for all of us, trying to soften the blow. Then, with a deep breath, I handed her the diary, open to the fateful entry, my heart pounding in my chest. I watched her face as she read, her eyes scanning the familiar cursive, her expression shifting from confusion to dawning horror, then to a profound, heartbreaking sadness. Tears welled in her eyes, silent and steady, tracing paths down her wrinkled cheeks, a testament to decades of unspoken pain. "Oh, Olivia," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion barely audible. "My mother, she never told me. I always felt so guilty, so inadequate as a mother to Isabella. I thought it was just my depression, my failure to bond. But all this time..." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of pain and gratitude, a raw vulnerability. "You mean Isabella isn't—" "She's your daughter, Mom," I said gently, taking her trembling hand, squeezing it reassuringly. "She's always been your daughter. Grandma she tried to protect you, in her own way. She thought she was doing what was best for everyone, protecting the family from scandal." We sat there for hours, talking, crying, unraveling decades of unspoken pain and misunderstanding, piecing together the fragmented narrative of our family. Mom confessed her own struggles with depression, her feelings of inadequacy, her desperate attempts to connect with Isabella, who always seemed just out of reach, a subtle barrier between them. She admitted that she had always felt a strange distance from Isabella, a subtle barrier she couldn't explain, a feeling that Isabella was somehow more Grandma's child than hers. The diary confirmed her deepest, unspoken fears, but it also offered a strange kind of liberation, a release from decades of misplaced guilt, a chance to finally understand. "What do we do?" Mom finally asked, her voice weary but resolute, her eyes searching mine for answers. "Does Isabella need to know?" "I don't know, Mom," I admitted, the weight of the decision heavy on my shoulders. "It would destroy her, but living a lie? It's destroying us too. It's poisoning our relationships." We decided to take it one step at a time. First, we would seek professional help. A family therapist who could help us navigate this complex truth, who could help Mom process her own trauma, and who could guide us on how or if to approach Isabella, when and how to reveal the truth. We would work on healing our own relationship, Mom and I, building a stronger bond based on honesty and shared understanding, a foundation for the future. The next Sunday dinner was different. Isabella, still basking in her promotion, made another subtle jab about my lack of ambition, her words echoing with their usual condescension. But this time, her words didn't sting. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw not the perfect superior sister, but a woman unknowingly carrying the weight of a profound secret, a woman whose entire identity was built on a foundation of well-intentioned deception. My heart ached for her, for the truth she didn't know, for the pain that awaited her if it ever came out. I smiled, a genuine, unforced smile, a quiet strength radiating from within. "You know, Isabella," I said, my voice calm and clear, resonating. With a newfound confidence, "You're right. You are incredibly successful, and I'm proud of you. But success isn't always what it seems. And sometimes the things we think make us better are just more complicated than we realize. There's always more to the story." She looked at me, a flicker of confusion in her eyes, a subtle furrowing of her brow. She didn't understand. Not yet. But the seed had been planted. The truth, like a persistent weed, had a way of finding its way to the surface, however deeply buried. And I, Olivia Hayes, was no longer the understudy. I was the keeper of the truth, the quiet strength that held our family's fragile reality in my hands, ready to guide them towards a more honest future. And she didn't know that.